Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Cecilia. On behalf of OTC Markets, as well as our co-host, Zacks Small Cap Research, we're very pleased you've joined us for our next live presentation from Canurta Therapeutics. Please note, you can submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Akeem Gardner, Chief Executive Officer of Canurta Therapeutics, which is a private company. Welcome, Akeem.
Thank you very much for having me, Cecilia. Thank you all for being here today to hear our story about how we at Canurta are pioneering the development of botanical therapeutics that target inflammation and address unmet needs in neurology. So as I start my presentation, I just have some quick disclaimers. This is from a lot of the claims that you'll hear in this are from our forward-looking statements. You can refer back to this if you have any questions about where we go from here. Now, as I start to tell my story, I'm going to start by asking, what do many of you see when you see this image of McDonald's? Of course, we can't chat, so I'll just answer some of the commonly phrased thoughts, right? Some people may feel nostalgia. Some people may think like family time, happy meals with their kids, so on and so forth, junk food, right? McDonald's, we know, as one of the most popular brands that we have in the world. There's about 15,000 McDonald's across North America, 13,000 across the United States as well. And we would never think of McDonald's as something that is rare or something that is unique, which is very interesting because for every McDonald's that we have in the United States, we have 2 to 3 people suffering from a rare neurodegenerative disease that's called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS. Now, ALS is largely known as Lou Gehrig's disease after the famous Iron Man played for 17 seasons and then rapidly deteriorated after his diagnosis. Some of you may also know about the disease from the Ice Bucket Challenge that went famous 10 years ago, now on its 10th anniversary. You may have seen your favorite influencers and your favorite social media colleagues performing the challenge, but what many people don't know is that over the last 150 years of this disease, since it's been characterized, we know this disease to be 100% terminal. Everyone who gets this disease unfortunately passes away in, on average, 1,000 days. Think about that. From 1,000 days, going from fully strong, functional, living your everyday life, to rapidly deteriorating, losing the ability to walk, talk, speak, and eventually till you deteriorate and you suffocate, you drown, and you die from this disease. 90% of the disease is sporadic, which means there's no rhyme or reason to how people get it. It can happen any place, anytime, without a clear pattern or inheritance. The other 10% of the disease is familial or genetic, which means this disease, if you have a genetic form of it, can terrorize family member after family member, loved one after loved one, generation after generation. It's completely traumatic what's going on here. What's worse is that the disease is completely heterogeneous, which means it manifests differently from person to person. Symptoms occur differently from individual to individual, which makes diagnosis a complete nightmare. And if you're of a minority group, if you're Black or Indigenous, you on average get diagnosed 240 days later than our white counterparts. Can you imagine that? 1,000 days to live, 240 of those days spent wondering what's going on, where are these symptoms, what medicines can I help? Just a bunch of wasted time. Now, on the market today to help these patients are a couple of approved therapies, but these therapies are minimally effective at extending lifespan and provide no symptomatic relief. And though there are other assets in the pipeline and development, the way that traditional pharmas seem to go about treating diseases like ALS is they look for one thing wrong, single target mechanisms, and try to fix the entire problem. But in sporadic or in heterogeneous diseases, these approaches don't work, which is why we get failure after failure. Now, this has led to key opinion leaders, patients, and scientists, researchers saying that we need to take a new approach to how we try to solve this disease. It's not just one thing going wrong. It's way too complex. We have to approach treating these patients from multiple angles, and surely in nature, surely with our natural laws and our science, there must be some indications of tools that we can have to provide better outcomes than what we have today. Now, this is Miss Kathy Jordan. She was diagnosed with ALS in 1986. She recently passed away this year after living 38 years with ALS. And Kathy is who's now known as the patron saint of medical cannabis in Florida. As she famously said, she smoked the plant and she felt the disease stop. And Kathy's not alone. ALS patients and community groups like patients like me all around the world report using cannabis, medical cannabis, and various forms of the plant to be able to help them manage their symptoms, deal with their pain, their mood, their spasticity, so on and so forth. And this has been reported in the literature in areas like Europe and North America and Canada as well. Now, this is Dr. Ethan Russo. He is our senior medical advisor and who I sympathetically call or describe as the Michael Jordan of cannabis research because he is one of the most foremost leading experts in this field. Dr. Russo was not only senior medical advisor to GW Pharmaceuticals, the only other company to have cannabis-derived medicines pharmaceutically approved by the FDA and 25 other regulators around the world, but he had had a similar experience to Kathy when he was a medical doctor, a practicing neuroscientist. As he had once seen a patient who, over 10 years of treatment, refused to use traditional pharmaceuticals, used cannabis, and Dr. Russo noted over that 10-year period, that patient never got weaker as confirmed by physiotherapy testing. When Dr. Russo and I met in 2022, he was on a mission to be able to help this patient population because one of his loved ones had also passed away from this disease, and he had known about the history of the plant and what it can do here to be able to help. And when he saw the technologies that we were developing at Canurta, founded by spun out of intellectual property developed at the University of Guelph, he joined forces with myself and he said he's going to help us understand how medicinally and pharmaceutically we can develop drugs from the plant that can help patients who need the help the most. Now, the first thing that Dr. Russo taught us was the long traditional history of how cannabis-derived medicines had been used over time to be able to help in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia, ALS, spastic disorders, so on and so forth. And we know this because as early as 2700 BCE, Emperor Shangyin famously wrote, protracted taking of cannabis may make one fat, strong, but never senile. Even though even back then you might have gotten a little bit of munchies, they knew that the plant was good for the brain. We have writings in India, we have writings in the Middle East where they wrote that hashish, it eases the muscles of the limbs and what flows. Again, antispastic activity being reported from use of the plant. Now, narrowing and focusing on the pharmaceutical aspects of the plant, over the last 20 years, we see in the literature that researchers have taken a hard look at how you can use various elements from the plant, cannabinoids, terpenes, and whatever else might be there to help patients suffering from their symptomatic relief, providing neuroprotection, being able to slow, halt, or even reverse progression of the disease. People have tried clinical trials and patients report their experience, as I previously mentioned, but there are still gaps and opportunities that Canurta aims to capitalize on to be able to provide the best medicine forward that can help the patient population that needs our help the most. One of the clinical trials that we refer to is the trial called the Canal study, which was done with Sativex, one of the well-controlled cannabis-derived extracts that GW Pharma famously commercialized. Now, Sativex was a medicine for multiple sclerosis and spasticity, but in this trial with 60 ALS patients, an RCT, what we learned was that not only was Sativex able to improve the patient outcomes in regards to the modified Ashworth scale in spasticity and the pain numeric rating scale, but there were a whole bunch of other trends that maybe we could have got better benefit on if the trial was powered properly and if the asset was optimized for the ALS patient. But GW Pharma didn't do that work, and where they left off, we continued. And this is what has led much into our development of our CNR 401 program, our well-characterized botanical extract and oral liquid put together to be able to help patients suffering from ALS. And our innovation isn't just a full spectrum extract, but is properly constituted with novel components of the plant, namely the prenylated flavonoid, CAN5A, to be able to help patients with multiple mechanisms of actions instead of just targeting one single thing. We know that this extract will be able to help patients with their glutamate antagonism, the anti-apoptotic activity, microglial activation regulation, anti-inflammatory activity, and also provide the neuroprotection properties that can make a meaningful medicine that could become the standard of care in ALS and other dementia-related illnesses. This is some of our results from one of our preclinical studies where we used zebrafish because of their similarities to motor function in humans. And what we did is we gave the zebrafish BMAA, a neurotoxin which mimics sporadic ALS. What you can see in the bar chart on the left is that the normal fish, they get the neurotoxin and they reduce their distance moved. Edaverone, one of the standard of care medicines, is able to rescue that. And then 3 different versions of our products all provide efficacy as well, with 401A being the ideal version that we are looking to bring into our first in human clinical trials. And depending on how you look at the data, you can see we work at least as good as edaverone, maybe a little bit better on our treatment regimes. We've also done some RNA sequencing, some genetic analysis of the therapeutic activity of our asset versus edaverone. And if you look at the Venn diagram, you can see edaverone differentially expressed activity in 480 genes total. Our asset, though, had 924 genes differentially expressed after the experiment, a bunch of those in positive ways. We have a much broader therapeutic outcome potential than the standard of care medicines today. On the right of this page, you see some more work that we're doing to identify particular biomarkers and things that can help us track the effectiveness of our asset as we progress through our clinical trials and what it means for patients suffering from things like ALS, Alzheimer's, dementia, and other neurodegenerative diseases. A lot of this we can talk about much more later. When it comes to the competitive landscape, I've already mentioned the standard of care medicines. They provide minimal life extension benefits, on average 3.5 years after patients start taking them. They live on riluzole or radicava, the 2 medicines, but patients also get no symptomatic relief. So they're forced with taking a wide variety of other pills to be able to manage things like their pain, their fatigue, their sleep spasticity, so on and so forth. And all of these medicines, the full cocktail, provides a host of adverse events that come along as a risk of taking these medicines. But none of that we'll have with our CNR 401. We put the best of what nature has to offer all in a bottle to provide the neuroprotection, the symptomatic benefits in a safe and tolerable way that that we believe will provide life extension that we will just now go and prove in clinical trials. This is a snapshot of our phase 2 RCT, which will start at the Gleason Institute of Neurology in Washington State, where we'll look to work with our first 50 patients in an RCT format to start to get our POC clinical trial data, and which we can use to inform trial extensions and further clinical trials. We know that ALS is an orphan drug disorder, so there is many fast track advantages to being able to start in this disease area, provide benefits to patients, and rapidly progress our asset through towards commercialization as we seek NDA applications in the years to come. And we also know that the mindset of payers are shifting as food as medicines and plants as medicines is starting to become more mainstream. So it's only natural that we derive our future botanicals, our future pharmaceuticals from the very plants that are giving us these positive benefits today. We've done a whole bunch of work to understand the pharmacoeconomic advantage as to how this is going to get reimbursed when we get to the point in time where we need to file with this CDA or for Medicare approval. The key thing to note on this page is that right now the standard of care medicines cost ALS patients over $280,000 a year the first year that they get the disease, and they only live, again, on average 3.5 years. Based on our assumptions and our calculations, we know that we can reduce costs 84% versus the standard of care for patients while still making money. We know that we can have a $9.9 million incremental cost utility ratio improvement on the cost of our healthcare systems, direct costs, societal costs, and symptom management costs as well as we go forward. And we know that the impact on budget is going to be extremely beneficial by using a solution like ours when proved to work versus the standard of care medicines right now. All reasons why payers will look to reimburse a product like this for a patient population that has no other answers. Some people may get confused about our medicines and what the difference between us and smokable, recreational, or traditional medical cannabis is. And really, it's because we're focused on helping the physicians help the patients. And physicians are focused on medicines. Physicians want physicians have a call, sorry, for any medical cannabis or any medicine approved to help patients' populations to go through the standard clinical assessment process, gaining FDA approval. Medical marijuana is traditionally seen as a myth because smoking is inherently unsafe. So it's how do you tell a practitioner to prescribe something to their patient where they're going to smoke and that might hurt their lungs? And the FDA does have a botanical drug development approval pathway available for companies like ours who understand the rigorous CMC and the rigorous clinical trial requirements required to be able to help patients with nature-derived medicines. The other reason why our product has to go through trials is because it's going to be useful for pediatric populations, people suffering from things like juvenile ALS, which is an N of 1 disease, an ultra rare disorder, and people suffering from things like SMA, which often manifest as genetic disorders in children. We have the ability to help these children extend their lifespan, manage their symptoms, improve quality of life, and then again, in certain populations, we believe we can be disease modifying as well. For our company, we are focused on designing multi-target solutions that are botanically derived with the rigorous CMC required to be able to get FDA, Health Canada, EMA approval. Our pipeline focuses on rare molecules found in the plant, namely the prenylated flavonoid canflavin A. And why canflavin A stands out is because it's found in ultra low quantities in plants, under 0.14%, but it was understood and characterized to have 30 times the anti-inflammatory power of ASA, the active ingredient in aspirin, without the negative adverse events targeted hitting the COX-1 pathway. So what we have the ability to do is put canflavin A together in combinations or in single purified ingredients to be able to help patients suffering from neurodegenerative diseases like ALS, Alzheimer's dementia with our CNR401 asset, but other assets as well, targeting things like inflammatory related diseases, skin inflammation, and so much more. Our IP portfolio is filed with our IP portfolio is designed to have filings in 7 major markets of the world, 23 global patents, but with our first patent granted by the US Patent Office for currently the only way to get these rare canflavins in food or pharmaceutical grade and in commercial quantities. These are our revenue projections as we look to launch our products in the market over the next 24 months. Our go-to-market strategy sees us launching products in markets of the world that have favorable regulatory environments and the ALS patient population looking for the solutions like that we have to offer. These include markets like Germany and Sao Paulo, Brazil, where we can start to interact with practitioners and get patients on our drugs, collecting real-world evidence as we earn money and do our clinical trials back at home in Canada and the US. And all, oh, Right now, as a private company, we're looking to raise our first $5 million to give us some pre seed equity to get into these clinical trials and then prepare for public market listing. Over the next 9 to 12 months, we'll seek a listing on the TSXV, and then we're very excited about opportunities of cross listing with the OTC markets, which makes me excited about why I'm here today. And this is also exciting because when you look at companies like GW Pharma and their exit potential getting acquired for $7.2 billion for them having their two botanically approved medicines, and you look at the RNPV value of just CNR401 alone, not only our ability to help in ALS, but other neurodegenerative diseases, there's a lot of shareholder value that we are poised to create as we go on this journey. Now, a little bit about me as a founder. This is my family. These are my grandparents in the middle. My grandfather and grandmother came from Jamaica in 1972. They brought with them my mother on the right of my grandfather and had my aunts and uncles here. And I learned much about what it's like to be family driven, to be resilient, and to build business from all of these people in front of you today. Now, I'm the first grandchild, so I'm not saying I'm the favorite, but I am saying I'm just the first, right? I grew up playing sports my whole life. I went to school for psychology and philosophy. I thought I wanted to coach before realizing I wanted to be a general manager, the person who puts the team together to win a championship. So with that, I went to law school from 2015 to 17, and when I graduated, returned home to Canada. I was fascinated by the opportunity that Canada was giving us to learn about the plant, the science, because we were legalizing cannabis. But the second thing that happened in 2017 that was really inflecting for me was my grandfather. This is him today, was also diagnosed with Parkinson's. And this was meaningful because at this time I was seeing a lot of videos of people taking extracts and it helping them with their tremors in the States. So this made me want to understand the science of the plant. So I did what any good entrepreneur does. I took the line of credit that I had to go to law school and I started a 60-acre farm. And I planted the plant so that I can figure out what it can do. This is me and our farm and how we harvested that first year, all with that 4x4 Ford truck. This was the best thing that I could have done because it put me on track to meet the professors at the University of Guelph as I was inviting everyone to our farm to take our hemp, study it, and it allowed us to eventually learn about the intellectual property that we've acquired that allowed me to build everything that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation today. And never would I've known that I would have landed studying something like ALS that exists on a spectrum of with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, eventually being able to understand solutions that can help people like my grandfather in the years to come. So I'll ask you from here as we wrap up, every time you see McDonald's, what I want you to think of is the 2 to 3 patients suffering from this terminal disease that have no other answers on the market and their fight for bringing new solutions to market and what they go through every day. And not only what they're going through, but also their loved ones and what they're facing, the caregivers, all demanding solutions, all demanding investments going into this area of R&D. And think about our team up north here in Toronto and the solutions that we're putting together to understand how the plants can help patients who need our help the most. And I would ask if any of you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me to understand how you can help as we go on this journey today, because ALS is not rare and these people need our help the most. Thank you very much for our presentation. At this time, I'll ask, do we have any questions? Okay. So the first question is, how does Canurta differentiate itself from competitors currently in the neurodegenerative and inflammatory treatment markets? And the simple answer is to that is specifically with neurodegeneration, these are complex diseases. There are multiple things going wrong leading to the degenerating of motor neurons. So it's very hard to target a single mechanism, a single target in the human body and affect people that are suffering from sporadic heterogeneous diseases. What we do is we put the best of what nature has to offer in a single monotherapy so that the widest variety of patients can get benefit and get help. And we have unique patents on not only the methods of producing these medicines, but also on their compositions that act in equivalent to NCE type patents that will protect our portfolio as we continue to grow from there. Outside of that, all the data that we get as we continue amongst our drug development programs, the data that we get from patients will go into our regulatory filings, which will provide an additional layer of defensibility as we continue to grow. I see another question here. How supportive are the US and Canadian health agencies of cannabis medicinal research? Very good question. Well, in Canada, we have a head start because we've legalized cannabis federally recreationally as of 2018. That has led to a lot of research being done and calls for proper standardized research from Health Canada and other medical agents and other agencies as well, like the CDA. Interestingly enough, many people don't know, but Canada was actually the first to allow approval for a cannabis-derived medicine back in 2005 when they allowed Sativex to be approved for spasticity, treatment of patients with spasticity. But where Sativex failed is that they didn't go all the way in getting reimbursement from the payers, which is why the commercial opportunities lagged. This is some of where we're switching our approach, starting with all the areas that Sativex failed, so that as we continue to engage the regulators and the payers, we can have our ducks in a row so we can hopefully move faster with all the lessons learned from the errors that came before us. Next question, do you see Canurta as replacement of existing ALS drugs or a supplement? We think Canurta has the potential to become the new standard of care medicine for every ALS patient that would come to take it and patients that suffer from other neurodegenerative diseases. Whether we, again, slow, halt, or completely reverse the disease, we'll learn as we get into more long form clinical trials and natural health studies. But what we do know, again, taken from the anecdotal evidence of people like Kathy Jordan and people like the patient that Ethan had, right now patients are dying in 1,000 days on average. If we can provide a solution that helps patients live 38 years with improved quality of life, if even we're not the cure, but we give time for the cure to come in years to come, that is what the patients are looking for. That is what their loved ones are looking for. Tools and solutions that can help them stay and work longer, enjoy life with their loved ones, and live longer, not just have this rapid degeneration that happens again in on average 1,000 days after diagnosis. I see another question about discussing the regulatory path and timeline. So right now we are working on our pre-IND package and IND submission come the first quarter of 2025. Our goal is to get ourselves first patient dosed in our phase 2 trial come March to June of next year as well. If we can do this and continue to recruit as our analysis suggests, we will be able to get to through our phase 2 trial, our international trial within the 18 to 24 months, and then we will be able to go and re-engage the regulators for potential breakthrough therapy, fast track designations, conditional market approvals in markets like the United States, in markets like Canada, and other areas around the world. Let's see if I have another question. What are the most promising outcomes from recent preclinical studies involving CNR401? I went through that very quickly, but again, we have a lot of hit to lead studies done in models like zebrafish and the models like C. elegans that show the difference of different formulations uniquely and specifically and how they affect these beings in their in vitro models. We know that we have activity that seems to be greater than edaverone, one of the standard of care medicines, and we know that the genetic insights that we've gotten from those experiments suggest that we have a much broader therapeutic potential than they do in regards to things like anti-inflammatory activity, passing and maintaining the blood-brain barrier, anti-apoptotic activity, so on and so forth. So now our goal is to get ourselves from where we are into the clinic, treating patients in our phase 2 studies to be able to gather back those insights and reformulate as we continue to go forward from there. And do we have time for one more? How does Canurta plan to maintain its competitive advantage, especially with his focus on rare polyphenols like canflavins? We didn't talk a lot about it today, but our underlying technologies make up our PolyChi platform, which is our suite of technologies used for the identification, characterization, and manufacturing of rare molecules found in nature. And the unique thing that we're doing that much of the broader industry doesn't have the ability to do is get to extremely rare molecules found in plants and extract them in food and clinical grade in commercial quantities so that they can be used in GRAS approved medicines for the benefit of patients. The US Patent Office has already approved our first patent, giving us the exclusive rights to do this in the United States. And we have other patents filed in other areas of the world, like the European Union, Mexico, Canada, China, and India, which are all the manufacturing areas of the world that might become competitors as we continue to progress. Okay. I think we're at 30 minutes. So thank you all very much for your time and for the ability for me to present. I'm extremely excited to be at this conference and for the ability to come back in the months and years to come so that you guys can continue to watch our growth as we go from private to publicly traded and as we continue to hit our milestones along our clinical development pathway. If anyone has questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you all very much for the time today. I'm Akeem.